Today's story is a lesson. It's a lesson to all of the perverts out there who would prey on our youth. Not just the men, but the women as well. For those of you who are incapable of understanding this, women do prey on young boys actually as much as men prey on young girls. It's actually quite common. And in fact, in the US, it is such a commonality that it has almost become a trend online to respond to cases such as this, acting as though the young boy was somehow lucky. And in some cases, you might even say that, oh, that 16-year-old boy who is, practically an adult, who managed to have sex with a 20-something-year-old teacher who is extremely attractive, is in fact lucky. You might argue with that. Maybe. You might even believe it. And maybe the 16-year-old boy would agree with you. In fact, if I had gotten to have such an interaction with some of my own teachers when I was in my 16s, I probably would have considered myself lucky. Hell, even nowadays, I probably would talk about it as, well, actually, I probably wouldn't talk about it publicly for, the teacher's safety, but I probably would hold those memories in high regard. However, that is not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is a predator. And by predator, I do mean a hunter, somebody who was attempting to prey upon somebody they deemed to be weaker. And they were surprised. So for those of you who aren't aware, this occurred a couple days ago, or at least the news came out of it a couple days ago, of a teacher who decided to prey on a special needs student, a little boy with Down syndrome, and she offered him not just sex, but apparently also money. And in exchange for this sex and money, she wanted him to bring a weapon to school and murder another teacher that she considered to be a rival. This young boy proceeded to take the money, take the sex, and then snitch. And by doing so, got her arrested. So we're going to go over this article by the New York Post talking about how this teacher, who had a sexual relationship with a special needs student, asked him to bring a gun to school to shoot a colleague of hers. A twisted Colorado teacher who started a sick relationship with special needs student sent thousands of messages to him, ordered the child to bring a gun to class to shoot her colleague, and introduced him to fentanyl. It was fentanyl, not money, yes. Prosecutors said. Imagine Kay Ewer. She has "ew" in her name. That's about right, considering how disgusting of a creature this woman is. Was busted after officials noticed her obvious favoritism toward the 16-year-old boy, according to the First Judicial District Attorney's Office in Lakewood, CO. Colorado, yes. Ewer, 28, showed an unhealthy interest in her student that was noticed almost immediately after she started working at Brady Exploration School in August 2023. The DA office's investigation revealed. This is the fiend in question. Not particularly attractive, but also not unattractive. She probably could have found a relatively attractive partner if she, wasn't a fucking freak. Let us continue. In November 2023, after the boy hinted at an improper relationship with Ewer in a classroom assignment that another teacher saw, authorities at the school contacted the Lakewood Police Department. They soon uncovered evidence of a disturbing sexual relationship between the pair, including explicit text messages and signs that drugs, guns, and alcohol had been introduced per prosecutors. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of messages were sent by Ewer to her student, and vice versa, with references to many sexual encounters, according to prosecutors. You were introduced a teenager to illegal and deadly drugs, including fentanyl. So not only fentanyl, but other drugs as well. Fentanyl is only being mentioned by name, probably because it's the most popular one, especially nowadays. Fentanyl has kind of become a drug of fame, or infamy at least. It's almost like the cool drug right now, kind of like cocaine and crack and ecstasy. They've all had their time. Now it's fentanyl's turn. Regardless, I feel like a better choice would have been marijuana. It's not that illegal, and most people don't consider it to be a deadly drug. Regardless, let us continue. She also attempted to get the boy to bring. Oh, by the way, it would still be incredibly bad. Like I'm absolutely kidding. It would be incredibly bad. Like look me in my eyes. Look me in my baby blues that are not blue at all. It would still be bad if it had been marijuana, if it had been anything, any illicit material, any booze, drugs, it's all bad. It's all bad. Every part of this situation that this woman was involved in was bad because she's a bad person. Continuing. She also attempted to get the boy to bring a gun to their sexual encounters as well as shoot a fellow faculty member in their school. The sentencing hearing heard. Ewer told the boy to bring the gun to school and shoot another faculty member in the leg, Chase said at the hearing. Speaking at the hearing on January 31st, the boy's mother spoke of Ewer's painful betrayal of herself and her vulnerable son, the DA said. She said Ewer had preyed on her son and led him to believe she genuinely cared for him, all while exploiting him for money and manipulating him into thinking he was the one, she said. What makes this even more painful is that I trusted the defendant, she added in court. Ewer was sentenced to 4 years in jail on... Did I misread that? Is there supposed to be a 20 before that 4 or something? What the hell? After pleading guilty last November to sexual assault on a child and contributed to the delinquency of a minor, both felonies, a month before her trial was due to start. Okay, so she pled guilty before trial. That's why she got such a reduced sentence. Makes sense. In exchange for her guilty plea, prosecutors dismissed 3 other felony counts and 1 misdemeanor. She also faces at least 10 years of sexual offender probation, which could be a life sentence depending on her success with a sex offender treatment program. Ewer apologized to her victim's family in court as she stood before the judge, according to the DA's office. I'm really sorry. This will never happen again. Paraprofessionals are paid to provide classroom management and additional instruction to a licensed teacher. Right. Currently, there are no required classifications. Okay, yeah, whatever. So overall, as you can see, this creature here is, in fact, an evil fiend that honestly should probably spend the rest of her life away from civilized society. Regardless, that is not the decision that was made. The reason I bring this up is because this is something that is actually quite common. It's a terrible thing. I think it's bad. Ooh. Molesting kids, bad thing. No way, right? But overall, it is sad. It's sad that this woman did this. Not for her, of course, but because of this child. The 16-year-old boy, special needs boy, which, from what I understand, has Down syndrome, but it could be something else. Regardless, he was intelligent enough to hint at the situation to another teacher, which is what alerted the police, which is a good thing, right? It means that the boy was in his special needs, in his vulnerable state, he was still able to strike back against this predator, and he was able to put a dangerous woman in her place. Unfortunately, the sentence is only going to be for 4 years and only 10 years of probation. Sometimes punishment does not necessarily fit the crime, but you take what you can get. It's a good thing that she was arrested, and it's a good thing that she'll spend the next 10 years in probation. Regardless, this is not a good thing. It is not a good thing when adults prey on minors. Children is what we're talking about. The idea that a 16-year-old can consent to sex with somebody who is in their late 20s, in their 30s, is ludicrous. There's a reason that we do not believe that. Hell, after I left my teens, when I turned 20, 21, I started to actually be exposed to the real world. I started to realize just how sheltered you are as a child. And I think most people come to this conclusion as well. So the very idea that a 16-year-old can consent is, as I said, it's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. A 16-year-old cannot consent, nor can a 17, nor can an 18, realistically. That's why it's weird. It's not a crime anymore because we need to begin to trust kids with their own fate. That's why we've decided that 18 is the appropriate time for that. And so that's where we live it. That's where we leave it. It's 18. Before that, it's a crime. After that, it's still a little weird because it kind of feels like you were just waiting. And at the same time, they are still just as immature as a 16-year-old. Like, sure, they have a couple extra years, but it's another extra years in the exact same environment, in schools, not out in the world, not out exploring reality, not having a job, not interacting with other adults in a safer environment, or at least not necessarily safer, but in a more mature environment. And that's why it's bad. Because that child has no way to have the context necessary to consent, and doubly so for somebody who has special needs. And there are a lot of cases of this. I'm not going to say that it's, a majority. I'm not going to sit here and say, it's the Catholic Church, because even the Catholic Church isn't the Catholic Church. It's bad. Yes, there's a lot of cases. Yes, it's not the majority. It's not that common. 90% of people go through lots of contact with the Catholic Church and never have contact with this sort of thing. And the same thing with schooling. But the people who do have these interactions, the people who do suffer through this, their life is changed forever. They suffer. And they suffer because of these predators. What I said at the start of the video, how, 16-year-old me would probably consider such an experience, a good thing. Yeah, probably. There's no telling what the damage would be, though. There's no understanding that until much later down the line. Much further along my life's journey, maybe when I was 30 or 40, would I realize that, this actually hurt me very deeply. And I never even realized it because I never even had the ability to contextualize it. And that's why it's a bad thing. Because this can hurt you at such a deep level that you yourself don't even know you've been hurt until somebody is able to show it to you. That's why it's so predatory. Because it's somebody who is not only vulnerable, but they're so vulnerable they don't know they're vulnerable. And I do hope that we can put a stop to this sort of situation, that we can be more watchful for these sorts of creatures, and that in the future, when these sorts of creatures, these fiends, these monsters, these people who prey on the most vulnerable in our civilization, in our society, both children and the mentally ill, and sometimes the mentally ill children, or, special needs, the mentally retarded. And I say that not as an insult, I say it as a medical term. Mentally handicapped, whatever you prefer to call it. It's a terrible thing. I hope I didn't bring down the mood too much. Let me know what your personal favorite insult is for these types of people. I want to increase the amount of slurs that I know for predators. But, with all that being said, I hope you guys had a good time. I hope you guys laughed at least once during this video. I hope this opened your eyes a little bit. Let me know if you've suffered with this sort of thing. Let me know. Safe space here. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Cheers.